entertainment. Those jerking on the ropes were applauded by men, women, and children who crowded the gallows for the best view. In 1738, the Bishop of Coin, George Berkeley, observed that morality in England had declined to a degree that was never known in any Christian country. Burning with his newfound faith, John Wesley looked for a place to preach. He went to the church that had once been his father's.
And so he asked this man, he said, you know, would you mind if I just preached in my father's pulpit? And the man said, no, I don't want you to preach in your father's pulpit. You know, this is my parish. And Wesley shot back with the expression, well, the whole world's my parish. So what he did was he just went outside, stood on his father's gravestone, and preached to the people who weren't going to church, which meant obviously all the poor people.
It was about this time when John Wesley recorded the account of an extraordinary prayer meeting.
About 3 in the morning, as we were continuing instant in prayer, the power of God came mightily on us, insomuch that many cried for exceeding joy, and many fell to the ground. As soon as we were recovered a little from the awe and amazement at the presence of His Majesty, we broke out with one voice, we praise Thee, O God. We acknowledge Thee to be the Lord.
Some theologians feel the Great Awakening began early that morning in that small prayer room. As Wesley preached with boldness, persecution and even death threats followed. His philosophy was to stay put, even when threatened with gunpowder, and very often his attackers got converted.
He drew a crowd because it was such an extraordinary sight for this dapper little Oxford scholar, you know, to want to talk to Tom, Dick, and Harry and the mob about Jesus.
Douglas Wallen is official historian at Wesley's Chapel in London.
At first, of course, the crowd was often hostile. They treated the thing as a joke, and sometimes there was what you would call abuse and violence. But they soon knew they were in the presence of a man who loved them, and he soon drew great crowds everywhere he went.
Wesley kept a hectic schedule. He rose daily at 4 a.m. and was preaching by 5. During the next 52 years, he traveled over 250,000 miles, preaching 50,000 sermons to crowds of often 30,000 or more. He once noted that he had taken off a few days to relax. He spoke just 14 times that week instead of the usual 28. John was also a writer, completing 233 books, as well as translating many hymns. Many of the world's most beautiful hymns were written during this period by his brother, Charles. The awakening vastly changed Britain because men like Wesley bombarded the heavens with prayer. At one time, when the revival seemed to be fizzling out, Wesley prayed, "O Lord, send us the old revival. We must have the revival." Another reason the awakening had such a radical effect was because Wesley insisted on genuine repentance.
Wesley said, you know, you get down there and pray until you know that you were born of God. And maybe in a sense that was the difference, that those people who were born again were really born again. And so Wesley said, give me 100 men and I'll give you England. Give me 100 sold-out men and I'll give you England. And when he died, there were 176,000 of them.
After his death, the Gentleman's Magazine reported that Wesley's personal influence was greater, perhaps, than that of any private citizen of any country. There is a secret to John Wesley's success that we all can learn from. A note written in his journal reads, "I found that my strength lay in keeping my eye fixed upon him, and my soul waiting upon him continually." John Wesley's secret was prayer.
John Wesley's secret, prayer, man. That was, you know, you perhaps forget that England had some major problems back during this day, and that brought it out very clearly.
Many more bars than there were churches. I mean, we think things are bad here. They were horrible. And you know, France and England were both heading for a revolution. This was the time, you remember, the French Revolution.
French had theirs.
They had theirs, and they executed the whole upper class practically, and many of the middle class. And in England, they turned to revival and strength. One laid the foundation for 100 years of prosperity. The other put the empire into third-rate status from which it really never totally recovered.
You know, people say, but can something like prayer really make a difference? I mean, don't we need to get out there and do something instead of just praying?
You know, you remember praying Hyde over in India. He said, I was going to work all day. I'd work 8 hours and pray one. Then he said, I said, what I'll do, I'll pray 8 hours and work one. He said, I accomplished a great deal more. But we've just, the reason we're not praying is because there's so much activity. We've got so much going on. Remember, Wesley rode horseback 250,000 miles. And when he stood up on those horses, he was writing the book of discipline of the Methodist Church and these wonderful books. I mean, I've got a set of his letters. They're incredible. That's what he said. But yes, there's hope for America. That's what we're doing, obviously. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are asking you to do during this week is to do something. We want you to pledge something. You know, you say, well, you want money? No, we don't want money. We want prayer. We want you to pledge that you'll pray for this nation. We can talk about all the horrible things, and there are plenty of things going on. There's good and there's bad. You know, this is a great country. And we can talk about the family problems and so forth. But how is this country going to change? It's not going to change through politics. We should have righteous leaders. We need it, and the government can do an awful lot in making things bad or keeping things stable. But we have a telephone number. It's a toll-free Watts number, 800-759-0700. Behind me here in the studio, there are many, many, many people on the telephones. And what we want you to do is to say, I will pray for America. I will pray for revival. I'm going to be praying with you to that we'll see this country shaken by the power of God, and that in my life I might have revival. Revival starts with me. It starts with Ben. It starts with Sheila. It starts with all of you. That's where revival comes about. 1-800-759-0700. And if we're going to have hope for this country, for the long-range future, revival's the answer, folks. It really is. We've got some grave problems, and if we keep going the road we're going, it may take 10, it may take 20, it may take 40 years, but it will go down the way of all the other great empires.
Or we headed there fast. You know, someone said the average age of an empire was 200 years. You know, the average age of a major civilization.